Laudetur Jesus Christus. This is Brother Andre Marie, prior of Saint Benedict Center and host of Reconquest on the Crusade channel. Today, the Feast of Corpus Christi, 2026, we have published an important document on our website, Catholicism.org, dispelling some falsehoods about our community, the Slaves of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The title of the document is Unacceptable. Did the CDF censure Saint Benedict Center's beliefs in 2016? Please share this video and the document with friends and family who would like to know the facts of our case. One point of order before I read the piece. We have a farm here, so it is possible that a tractor, pig, chicken, or goose may walk past this building while I'm recording. If so, just consider it part of Saint Benedict Center's rural character. Unacceptable. Did the CDF censure Saint Benedict Center's beliefs in 2016? By Brother Andre Marie, MICM. There is a false narrative circulating about Saint Benedict Center and the Slaves of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. According to this narrative, our beliefs on the dogma extra ecclesiam nulla salus, outside the church there is no salvation, were formally censured by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith in October of 2016. This false narrative constitutes the foundation of the unjustly imposed, oppressive decree of precepts that was published against us on January 7th, 2019. There's a footnote here. Pope Francis changed the name of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, the CDF, to the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, the DDF, in his March 19, 2022 Apostolic Constitution, Predicate Evangelium. The changes went into effect on June 5th of 2022. Because this study considers matters taking place in 2016, the older name is used throughout. Back to the text. In point of fact, the CDF did not publish a censure of any doctrinal position of ours. Now, I am clearly an interested party in this dispute, and it is an ecclesiastical authority in the Diocese of Manchester, New Hampshire, that has circulated this narrative, in the person of the very Reverend Georges Dallaire, judicial vicar, and formerly Episcopal Vicar for Canonical Affairs. Thus, the burden of proof would seem to fall on me to show his assertion to be false. It is my intention to do just that in these lines, by citing not only the very protocol letters cited by Father Dallaire in his relevant public statements, but also by citing the communications leading to and following from those protocol letters, communications that revealed the context of the October 2016 CDF protocol letters. To date, most of this information has not been made public. There's a footnote. It may be asked why we have waited so long to publicize this information. The answer is twofold. First, that we wanted to follow our Lord's injunction in Matthew 18:16 and following regarding what to do when your brother has offended against you. Second, we thought it more virtuous to avail ourselves first of the Church's own canonical due process rather than to make a hasty appeal to the court of public opinion. Having long since made multiple attempts to make things right with Father Dallaire, having filed several hierarchical recourses or appeals against his decree, and having waited over 7 years since the decree was published, we now deem it prudent and just to make a broader appeal to the Church at large, clerical and faithful, by publicly availing ourselves of our natural law right to defend our community and our cause. This is especially so because of the defamatory character of the decree. We have not given up on canonical due process, but we have been advised not to discuss the details of our currently ongoing canonical case. What we are addressing here is the historical background of what took place before the decree, truth that needs to be known. Back to the text. Here is the most complete statement of the false narrative that has been put into the public record. It comes from the civil complaint that Father Dallaire filed in his still pending lawsuit against Michael Voris and Church Militant and company. There are other people in that lawsuit, and it's still not finished. Quote, doctrinally, The Saint Benedict Center interprets a particular Catholic principle known as extra ecclesiam nulla salus, which means outside the church there is no salvation, in a manner that is incompatible with the official teachings of the Catholic Church. In 2016, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith in Rome, the ultimate voice in Catholic doctrinal interpretation, declared the St. Benedict Center's interpretation of this doctrinal principle, quote, unacceptable, end quote. See October 20th, 2016 letter from Monsignor Giacomo Morandi to Brother Andre Marie, a true and accurate copy of which is attached here too as Exhibit A. In the October 20th, 2016 letter to Brother Andre, the same congregation stated, quote, this letter officially closes the discussion on this matter, end quote. See Exhibit A, etc., etc. And the references are in this document. Note the use of the word unacceptable in paragraph 35. This word has been treated as if it were an official censure of specific doctrinal beliefs of Saint Benedict Center. But this is false. The word is absent from the Catholic lexicon of theological censures, which employs such terms as heretical proposition, proximate to heresy, suspected of heresy, erroneous, false, rash, offensive to pious ears, ill-sounding, etc. And there's a footnote here with all those in Latin if you want to see that. Further, its application in this instance is also plainly inaccurate for the simple reason that Monsignor Morandi did not label any actual theological or doctrinal position of the St. Benedict Center as unacceptable. In order to prove this, I have to document the history of Monsignor Morandi's statement and my responses to it. Before that, some background is in order to set the stage. Background. Relations between the Diocese of Manchester and St. Benedict Center, SBC, from 2006 to 2013. In late 2006, I initiated a correspondence with Bishop John McCormick and then Monsignor Edward Arsenault regarding St. Benedict Center's canonical recognition by the diocese and obtaining the services of an approved priest to offer the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass for us in the traditional Roman Rite. After some written correspondence, there began a series of meetings with Monsignor Arsenault, starting with a lengthy meeting at the Chancery on July 18, 2007. At the same time, I was in communication with Monsignor Arthur Calkins of the Pontifical Commission Ecclesia Dei. The many subsequent correspondences and hours of in-person meetings involving officials of the Holy See, officials of the diocese, and myself successfully culminated in our being granted the services of a resident priest in mid-October of 2010. Father Mark Witthose, who was an official of the commission for 3.5 years, succeeding Monsignor Calkins, informed me that the Holy See had recommended that the diocese not only grant us a priest for Holy Mass and confession, but also, quote, set up the chapel of the community as a public oratory, end quote, and, quote, erect the fledgling institute as a public association of the faithful with a view after a period ad experimentum existence of being established as a diocesan institute with the right to have members ordained as priests, end quote. The quotes come from a May 15th, 2023 letter of Father Witthose and confirm my own recollections of these directives. And that letter from Father Witthose will be linked in the document that's published. Although the last two recommendations of the Commission never did become reality, the status quo of our having an approved priest continued from Bishop McCormick's tenure well into Bishop Labashi's, which commenced on December 8, 2011. There were setbacks and challenges along the way, but there was substantial progress made toward implementing the Commission's recommendations by the time Bishop Labashi asked us to resubmit our revised statutes for approval in a letter dated March 27, 2013. Things began to change for the worse later in 2013 when Father Georges Dallaire became actively involved in our affairs at the Chancery. To narrate these difficulties in detail would go beyond the scope of these present lines. in order to chronicle the latter part of this change for the worse, specifically that part of the timeline when the unacceptable narrative came into existence, I will take the reader on a chronological tour of the correspondences that are relevant to answering the question we have proposed for ourselves in this study. March 21st, 2016. My letter to Cardinal Mueller. Father Dallaire made it very clear that our adherence to extra ecclesiam nulla salus was a problem. Because he kept pressing me on the issue, I wrote to the then Cardinal Prefect of the CDF, Cardinal Gerhard Ludwig Müller, a German prelate, on March 21st, 2016. In this linked PDF file, again, it's linked from the document, the English text on page 2 is what I actually wrote. Only the German text, translated by a friend who is a native speaker, was sent to the Cardinal. The letter was communicated via email to Cardinal Müller's secretary. My purpose in that letter is clear from 2 central paragraphs in the letter. Quote, that a Catholic in good standing may hold this interpretation, that is, the so-called strict interpretation of the dogma extra ecclesiam nulla salus, is something we were assured of in 1988 when a diocesan official in Worcester, Massachusetts, informed us that the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith told him this. We have this in writing. Cf. Letter of May 4th, 1988, from Father Lawrence Deary, JCL, to Father John B. McCormick. Interestingly, the Father John B. McCormick was then a diocesan official in the Archdiocese of Boston. Later, he became our bishop here in Manchester, New Hampshire. Would Your Excellency please clarify this matter and assure us once again and officially that the communities tracing their origin to Father Leonard Feeney are indeed entitled to hold and teach the strict interpretation of extra ecclesiam nulla salus, end quote, from my letter. The language strict interpretation is not ours. It comes from the referenced letter of Father Lawrence Deary, then Vicar for Canonical Affairs and Judicial Vicar for the Diocese of Worcester, Massachusetts. I employed this inadequate term merely as a convenient shorthand. April 15th, 2016. Monsignor Morandi's reply to my letter to Cardinal Mueller, the first CDF protocol letter on the matter. My letter to Cardinal Mueller was answered by the then Undersecretary of the CDF, Monsignor, later Archbishop, Giacomo Morandi, an Italian cleric, in a letter dated April 15, 2016, protocol number 1732/66-55029. As a footnote here, it would be ideal if I could publish these letters on our website as supporting documentation. However, the Holy See's policy on protocol letters is that they not be published without express authorization of the relevant dicastery, which I do not have. Anyone with a compelling interest in the case may contact me to arrange a viewing of our copies of the 2 protocol letters referenced in this study. Back to the text. This communication was a summary, this communication from Monsignor Morandi, was a summary of recent magisterial statements on extra ecclesiam nulla salus, drawn exclusively from Dominus Jesus and the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Though he was responding to my German letter to Cardinal Müller, Monsignor Morandi's letter was written in English. May 26, 2016. My reply to Monsignor Morandi. On May 26, 2016, I wrote a reply. Now that reply is linked from this document on our website. I wrote a reply updating Monsignor Morandi on our situation with the diocese and informing him that because we were being threatened with draconian sanctions on this very point by Father Dallaire, I would like to meet with officials of the CDF to explain to them exactly what it is we hold in these controverted matters. Using a format recommended to me by another official of the Holy See, I wrote a brief letter of 1 page with a 2-page addendum consisting of 9 numbered observations. Critical to understanding the genesis of the label unacceptable and why it is inaccurate in this context, is point 8 of my observations attached to that May 26th letter. And again, the letter is linked on Catholicism.org from my document that I'm reading. Quote from that document, point 8. Some of the passages that your reverence cites in your letter of April 15 from the CCC and Dominus Jesus have been given different readings that are contrary to one another. There are also theologians of both liberal and conservative inclinations who hold that these pronouncements contradict what has previously been taught. But should we not here employ the hermeneutic of continuity and the principle obscura per clara interpretanda sunt, and conclude that there is no change to perennial doctrine? End of quote from my letter. In the interest of clarity, I have emboldened the last sentence of the paragraph, which is a rhetorical question employing the words should we not, to imply an affirmative reply, as in, should we not pray the rosary daily in accordance with Our Lady's request at Fatima, which may be contracted to the more colloquial, shouldn't we pray the rosary daily? Restated as a declarative sentence, my question proposes that there is no conflict between what was previously taught, the infallible formulae I explicitly cited earlier in my observations, and the more recent magisterial statements Monsignor Morandi referenced. I cited Pope Benedict's famous hermeneutic of continuity, which makes it absolutely clear that I am proposing a magisterial continuity and not a rupture. The Latin expression I use may be translated, that which is obscure ought to be interpreted by that which is clear. The use of this expression by a peritus of Vatican II may be found in footnote 42 of the article, An Examination of Subsistit in, a Profound Theological Perspective, by Father Carl Joseph Becker, S.J., in his study published in L'Osservatore Romano. Father Becker applied the expression to the interpretation of the text of Vatican II. Let me emphasize that understanding what I was saying in point 8 of my observations is crucial to making sense of what follows. October 20th, 2016, Monsignor Morandi's reply, the second CDF protocol letter on the matter. For whatever reason, possibly a language barrier, what I wrote in point 8 was not clearly understood by Monsignor Morandi. In fact, it was understood to mean the very opposite of what I actually wrote. In his response, dated October 20th, 2016, protocol number 1732/66-57466, Monsignor Morandi wrote, emphasis mine, in point 8 of your observations, you state that the articles from the Catechism of the Catholic Church and Dominus Jesus, which are constitutive of Catholic teaching on this subject, quote, have been given different readings that are contrary one to another, end quote. You also indicate that, quote, that, and here I've got this in bold, it is permissible to hold the position that these articles contradict what was previously taught. In conclusion, you suggest that these articles do not need to be accepted under the principle obscura per clara interpretanda sunt, and the hermeneutic of continuity. This position that you retain, even after the reception of our April 15 letter, is unacceptable, and your request to meet with the officials of the congregation cannot be granted. Again, I can't reproduce this letter because of the Holy See's rules on publishing protocol letters, but a rule which is violated routinely from what I'm told, but we're not going to violate it. But again, those who would like to see our copies of them may arrange for a viewing. But this is the beginning of the unacceptable narrative, what I've just read from that letter. Clearly, the Monsignor misunderstood me. Now back to my text. In addition to the word unacceptable that Father Dallaire cited later multiple times as a proof text, I have emboldened two passages in this paragraph which substantially misrepresent what I wrote in my letter. Regarding the first of these, I did not say that it is permissible to hold the position that these articles contradict what was previously taught, that is to say, the articles in the CCC and Dominus Jesus. I said rather that there are both liberal and conservative theologians who do in fact say that they contradict one another. an opinion I clearly contradicted with my "should we not?" rhetorical question. Concerning the second passage of Monsignor Morandi's I put in bold, I plainly did not say that these articles from the Catechism of the Catholic Church and Dominus Jesus do not need to be accepted. Indeed, I said that they need to be accepted according to the hermeneutic of continuity in such a way that, quote, there is no change to perennial doctrine, end quote. Aside from this obvious misunderstanding, another observation here is of great importance. Note that the paragraph begins with the words, quote, in point 8 of your observation you state that, etc., end quote, clearly showing that Monsignor Morandi is commenting only on that one point. Indeed, point 8 is the only one of my 9 numbered paragraphs that Monsignor Morandi quoted or even referenced in his 2-page letter. What he wrote is therefore restricted to the, quote, position, end quote, he mistakenly thought I was taking in that single-numbered paragraph. When I showed the complete exchange of letters to a priest who worked at another office in the Holy See at the time, he was appalled. He concluded that Monsignor Morandi, whose first language is not English, had misunderstood me. October 21st, 2016. Archbishop de Noya's letter to Bishop Labashi, the third CDF protocol letter on the matter. Over 2 years after I received Monsignor Morandi's October 20th, 2016 protocol letter, I learned that there was another CDF protocol letter that accompanied it. This third CDF protocol letter in the matter, dated October 21st, 2016, was a cover letter from Archbishop Joseph Augustine de Noya, OP, the adjunct secretary of the CDF, to Bishop Labashi. Its protocol number is redacted in the only version I have access to, the one on the diocese's website. In summarizing the context of Monsignor Morandi's letter, Archbishop de Noya wrote, quote, the letter of Monsignor Morandi makes clear to Brother Andre Marie that his theological position regarding the principle extra ecclesiam nulla salus is unacceptable. Furthermore, he is informed that his request to meet with officials from the dicastery is not able to be granted, and that this letter officially closes the discussion of the matter. End quote from Monsignor de Noya's, Archbishop de Noya's letter. If one read this brief 2-sentence summary of Monsignor Morandi's paragraph without reading what Monsignor Morandi actually wrote, one might assume that our complete position on the dogma extra ecclesiam nulla salus was being spoken of here. Rather, the only position deemed unacceptable was Monsignor Morandi's misunderstanding of what I wrote in point 8 of my observations, appended to my May 26, 2016 letter. As a respected theologian, the Dominican Archbishop, that is, Archbishop de Noya, certainly knows that unacceptable is not among the Church's theological censures. Had he carefully reviewed the correspondence, Archbishop de Noya, an American, would certainly have caught the misunderstanding. March 7th, 2017. My letter observing the 2 CDF protocols I received and pointing out the misunderstanding. Because Monsignor Morandi's second protocol letter clearly conveyed to me that the CDF would not meet with me and that, quote, this letter officially closes the discussion of the matter, end quote, I did not reply directly to him concerning his October 20th letter. Monsignor Morandi copied Bishop Labashi on the letter, so it was evident to me that the matter was being directed to the diocese to handle. Accordingly, on March 7th, 2017, I sent a 4-page letter to Father Dallaire, which respectfully addressed Monsignor Morandi's October 20th letter point by point, showing that we accept all the propositions in it and giving further explanations as to how we understand those propositions to be in continuity with previous magisterial texts. And by the way, I sent the letter to Father Dallaire because I was directed by Father Dallaire and by the bishop himself that I was forbidden to write to the bishop, so I wrote to Father Dallaire instead. In my March 7th, 2017 letter to Father Dallaire, I also took the occasion to address Monsignor Morandi's obvious misunderstanding of what I had written. And here I quote from my letter on March 7th, 2017 to Father Dallaire. Quote, through some misunderstanding, the Undersecretary, that is Monsignor Morandi, in his above referenced letter asserts that I, quote, indicate that it is permissible to hold the position that these articles contradict what was previously taught, end quote, when instead, clearly, I stated in writing the very opposite, quote, should we not conclude that there is no change to perennial doctrine, end quote. Contrary to Monsignor Morandi's assertions, nowhere in my letter referenced supra did I ever write, as he mistakenly asserts, quote, that these articles from the CCC and from Dominus Jesus need not be accepted. To the contrary, I emphatically profess, and have always professed, that the doctrine very clearly articulated in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, number 846, with its source in Lumen Gentium, number 14, is De Fide Divina et Catholica, confer Canon 750, paragraph 1 of the Code of Canon Law. Extra ecclesiam nulla salus. End of quote from my letter to Father Dallaire, dated March 7th, 2017. A letter that I have linked from here that's also been up on our website for years now. At this point, what I wrote above, that Monsignor Morandi did not label any actual theological or doctrinal position of the SBC as unacceptable, should be obvious. What he labeled as unacceptable were two positions I specifically did not assert. Number one, that one may hold that the Catechism of the Catholic Church, number 846 and following, and Dominus Jesus, numbers 20 to 22, need not be accepted. And two, that these articles contradict what was previously taught. That is the extent of what Monsignor Morandi called unacceptable. His statement was not a blanket judgment on the beliefs of Saint Benedict Center concerning extra ecclesia nulla salus. Yet this word, unacceptable, which is not a theological or canonical term of art, has been used by Father Dallaire in numerous correspondences, press statements, and even a civil complaint in a federal court of law, quoted in the beginning of this paper, as a single thread around which the tapestry of a false narrative has been woven. That false narrative is that the CDF authoritatively condemned a doctrinal error of Saint Benedict Center in October of 2016. My letter of March 7, 2017 concluded with these words, quote, in submission to the above official teachings of the Church, which in no manner can ever be contradictory one to another, or to other doctrines of the extraordinary or ordinary and universal magisterium, the undersigned very respectfully requests that the Diocese of Manchester archive its doubts as to my personal fidelity to the Church's magisterium, end quote. Father Dallaire never answered this letter. Then, almost 2 years later, in the Decree of Precepts issued on January 7th, 2019, he falsely accused me of failing to, quote, observe, end quote, what I had specifically affirmed to him nearly 2 years previously in detail. When I asked Father Dallaire why he had never replied in writing to my March 7th, 2017 letter, his answer was, quote, nowhere in your letter of 7 March 2019, seek, it should be 2017, did you raise a question warranting an answer from me or from those to whom you copied the letter? Your letter affirmed a list of propositions, end quote, from the letter of Father Dallaire to Brother Andre Marie, dated March 17th, 2021. And I cannot reproduce letters that were sent to me by other parties because technically in law, I believe, they own copyright on that. So I'm just quoting from that. Again, if you want to review the record, I have binders full of these correspondences. You can arrange a viewing. January 7th, 2019, Father Dallaire issues a decree of precepts based upon a false and therefore unjust foundation. The unjust decree of precepts, which is linked from this study here, against us was issued on January 7th, 2019. Under the diocesan letterhead are the words, in very large typeface, let it be known. There follows Father Dallaire's very important basis for the issuing of the precepts against us. Upon this supposedly factual basis rests the justice or injustice of the decree. And now I'm quoting from the decree. Quote, "For the following reasons, bullet point 1, that the decisions of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith of April 15th, 2016, protocol number 1732/66-55029, and of October 20th, 2016, protocol number 1732/66.57466, have not been observed," bullet point 2, "that those so corrected by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith have persisted in their obstinacy," confer the Code of Canon Law, 1983, Canon 750 and 751. And third bullet point, that scandal in the church continues, referencing the Catechism of the Catholic Church, 1997, numbers 2284 to 2287. Brother Andre Marie Villarubia and all those associated with the Saint Benedict Center, Saint Benedict Center, Inc., and the Immaculate Heart of Mary School, located in Richmond, New Hampshire, are placed under the following precepts as of 7 January 2019, etc. I'm not going to read the whole document, but I do have the decree of precepts linked from this study that I'm reading. Notice the reference in the first bullet point to the 2 CDF protocol letters of Monsignor Morandi. These are the letters that I above labeled first and second CDF protocol letters. Notice also the claim that these letters, quote, "have not been observed," end quote. This claim is logically related to the question we have set out to answer here, namely, whether the CDF actually censured our beliefs. Father Dallaire's basis for issuing the precepts against us is that the CDF corrected our beliefs and that we failed to observe this correction and therefore caused a scandal. He subsequently stated in his civil complaint, quoted at the beginning of this study, that our interpretation of the dogma, extra ecclesiam nulla salus, quote, "is incompatible with the official teaching of the Catholic Church," end quote. Now there's a footnote here on the word have not been observed, that word observed. To date, it is not clear what exactly Father Dallaire means by observing these protocol letters. We were not commanded to do anything specific in the letters. The April 15th, 2016 protocol notes that, quote, "the principle extra ecclesiam nulla salus must be interpreted according to the binding doctrine of the Church," end quote. My March 7th, 2017 letter explained with clarity and in detail exactly how we do that. The October 20th, 2016 protocol, which showed that Monsignor Morandi had misunderstood my reply to his earlier protocol, said that, quote, "the congregation would like to invite you to pray for the assistance of the Holy Spirit and to seek competent theological counsel so as to arrive at an understanding of the developed teaching of the Church and how her teaching is not contradictory," end quote. We acted upon this invitation. The professional academic theologian we consulted, a professor of dogmatic theology with a canonical mandate to teach priests and seminarians theology, found my March 7, 2017 letter on the topic at hand to be faithful to the teaching of the Church. Yet almost 2 years after receiving that 4-page letter, Father Dallaire wrote, with a notable lack of specificity, that we failed to, quote, "observe," end quote, the CDF protocol letters. Back to the text. The January 7th, 2019 decree of precepts Father Dallaire issued against Saint Benedict Center is based upon 3 patent falsehoods. 1, that we did not observe 2 protocol letters sent by the CDF. 2, that we are persistent in our obstinacy in not doing so, citing canons on heresy, schism, and apostasy. And 3, that therefore a scandal has ensued. Did the CDF condemn SBC's belief in 2016? Now we can answer the question at the top of this small study. No, the CDF did not condemn St. Benedict Center's beliefs in 2016. Moreover, to date, the CDF, now known as the DDF, has still not done so. After the decree of precepts was promulgated in early 2019, I published an expanded statement of doctrinal beliefs dated April 15th, 2019 on our website. In subsequent dialogue with Father Dallaire, I have referenced this statement and requested that a judgment be made concerning its orthodoxy. But, as with the letter that I addressed to him on March 7th, 2017, Father Dallaire has not replied to this request. July 16, 2020, Monsignor Morandi's letter to Bishop Labashi, the fourth CDF protocol letter on the matter. On July 16, 2020, Monsignor Morandi wrote yet another protocol letter, the fourth such letter from the CDF on this matter. This time addressed to Bishop Labashi, who subsequently sent me a copy of it. Unlike the earlier protocols, this one is marked confidential at the top. With this protocol letter, the CDF denied our hierarchical recourse against the decree of precepts. The reason for the denial of our recourse is worthy of note, as is a curious piece of incriminating evidence revealed in the letter. In defense of his decree of precepts, which, as shown above, was based upon three patent falsehoods, Father Dallaire has argued that the CDF agreed with his findings because Monsignor Morandi's protocol letter dated July 16, 2020 stated, quote, "The precept and its provisions take juridical effect," end quote. However, the CDF rejected our hierarchical recourse against the decree elimine, that is, on the threshold, which is technical canonical jargon, based on a mere procedural technicality and not on the merits. Because the CDF denied our recourse on a technicality, that dicastery has neither addressed the merits of Father Dallaire's decree of precepts nor our defenses against it. And I have to read two important footnotes here. Number one, I said Father Dallaire has argued that the CDF agreed with his findings. That is in a meeting, a face-to-face meeting that we had on January 7th of 2021. The other footnote 8, is much more important. The CDF determined that our January 2019 recourse to Bishop Labashi, which we sent before our recourse to the CDF, was filed 5 days late, based upon, quote, recent jurisprudence of the Supreme Tribunal of the Apostolic Signatura, end quote. Prior to that jurisprudence, whether a canonical act of an episcopal vicar carried with it a 10 or 15-day fatalia legis, that is, a canonical deadline, was debated by canonists. Competent canon lawyers have told me that our case established a clear precedent in the matter, a dubious distinction to be sure. Back to the text. The diocese reported inaccurate and damaging claims to the CDF while our case was pending there. Furthermore, Monsignor Morandi's protocol letter, dated July 16, 2020, revealed a curious claim that the diocese made to the CDF while our recourse against the decree was pending there. Citing a letter the CDF had received on May 23, 2020 from Bishop Labashi, the very same CDF letter that rejected our recourse on a procedural technicality noted the existence of, quote, problems surrounding the SBC community that involve the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation, end quote. The only such problems surrounding our community arose from Father Dallaire's persistent attempts in 2018 to manufacture a scandal involving the FBI by reporting, quote, involuntary servitude / human trafficking by slaves of the Immaculate Heart of Mary in Richmond, New Hampshire, end quote. Something chronicled in Anatomy of an Ecclesiastical Smear Campaign. Now that title of that article, Anatomy of an Ecclesiastical Smear Campaign, is linked from this document that I'm reading. So you can see that on our website also. The FBI opened and then closed an assessment of Father Dallaire's claims in just under 2 months, judging it inadvisable to open an actual investigation. Over a year and a half after the FBI's assessment was closed, and while our recourse was pending at the CDF, the diocese inaccurately reported to the CDF that there were current problems surrounding Saint Benedict Center involving the FBI. This information being given to the Roman officials at the very moment they were considering our challenge to Father Dalaire's decree of precepts could only have damaged our cause. Conclusion. Using a similar artifice to that of his false FBI narrative, Father Dalaire wove a fantastic tapestry around one word, unacceptable, to lead Catholics to think that the CDF had officially judged our doctrinal beliefs to be, in Father Dalaire's own words, quote, incompatible with the official teachings of the Catholic Church, end quote. Our best defense in this entire saga is the truth, and it is in the interest of truth that I am publishing this little study. There is more to follow. May he who is the way, the truth, and the life, John 14:6, confirm us all in the truth. As he prayed to his Father on the eve of his bitter and saving passion, quote, sanctify them in truth, thy word is truth, John 17:17. We are confident of our ultimate vindication, and more importantly, of the vindication of the dogma of faith that it is our vocation to propagate and defend. For it is a dogma of the faith, that is, a revealed truth that all must believe. And thus ends my little study. Unacceptable. Did the CDF condemn Saint Benedict Center's beliefs in 2016? I realize there's a lot of facts there, a lot of documents referenced. All the documents that I reference are linked from the web edition of this that's on Catholicism.org. So just go to Catholicism.org and search for unacceptable if you want to find it. And all of the documents that I could link, rather, are linked from that. The ones that I couldn't post on our website, the protocol letters, again, people are welcome to arrange an appointment. Contact me, bam@Catholicism.org. That's BAM@Catholicism.org, my email address, if you would like to make some sort of an arrangement to see these communications. The only one I can show is the one marked confidential at the top. I was assured by our canonist that I have to keep that one to my chest, even though Bishop Labashi did have the courtesy to send it to me. So it's in our files, and I can quote it, but I can't show it around. Thank you for your patience in listening to this if you've made it to the very end. God bless, and Mary keep you.